So welcome again. I'm Mike Rice. I'm in the World Languages, Literatures, and Cultures Department.
And I'm Alexa Blackwell. I'm in the English department.
And we want to welcome you and just let you know that this is a topic that has kind of evolved over time. And Alexa and I, when we were talking about this, we found we were very compatible in this because we both have a sense of what it takes linguistically to fit in at a university. We both have kind of similar background stories in trying to adapt our linguistic. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I grew up with a very kind of thick regional accent. And I strove very hard when I was younger to get rid of that so that people would take me more seriously in academic circles. So that's kind of a little bit on my background. What got me interested in this?
And in my case, I'm a non-native speaker of English. So I first came to the United States after my high school diploma. And for my freshman year, I was dealing with the professor who insisted that, given my Greek accent, that I come from a family with a Greek restaurant. And at the age of 18, I really was offended that I was being stereotyped this way. So I worked really hard to eliminate the accent and fit in. So as far as anyone knows, I'm as American as everybody else.
So
moving on.
Thanks. So the goals of the workshops, of this workshop today, is to reflect on how our own cultural and linguistic identities influence our assumptions, learning, and teaching practices, as well as to identify inclusive teaching strategies to support culturally and linguistically diverse college students. We plan on, so I'm going to define some terms. We're going to do some breakout rooms in which you can choose which room you'd like to go into to discuss. We have a set of questions that go along with the case studies that we asked you to watch in advance. And then we'll come back together, compare what we'd said in our different groups, and then do a culturally responsive teaching practices and strategies, and then wrap up and give additional resources. So two things that we need to maybe keep in mind as we go into our breakout rooms are the idea of culture. Culture is the learned foundation of individual and collective assumptions, values, beliefs, priorities, and behaviors developed by a population over time. Cultural competence is the set of behaviors, attitudes, and practices that enable professionals to provide effective, equitable services in cross-cultural situations. And at the right of your screen, you'll see this graphic of this tree about the way a lot of people define like culture. There's surface culture, which are observable patterns, food, music, dress, shallow culture, which are unspoken rules, so attitudes towards elders, concepts of time, nonverbal communication, and then deep culture, collective unconscious beliefs and norms, worldviews, concepts of self, decision-making, spirituality, health, and group harmony. So as we go into breakout rooms, so you will have the option to choose which breakout room you want to go on. Breakout room 1 is those people who are interested in the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story. And here are the 4 questions that you could consider as you go in. Do we view our students as having one story? And which stories do we assign MTSU students, perhaps based on observable traits, characteristics? How do our interactions with students reflect the one-story narrative? And what can we do in our classrooms or offices to present a variety of different stories or recognize that students are an anthology of different stories? Breakout room 2 on diversity, access, and inclusion. Number 1, which assumptions do we make about the pre-knowledge and social academic skills of our students? What type of guidance does MTSU offer to first generation or underprivileged students? Does Anthony Jack mentions 2 issues, the hidden curriculum and food insecurity, that undercut diversity's effort. What other kind of hurdles do our students at MTSU face? Which steps can we in the university take to help students overcome the hurdles that obstruct inclusivity? And breakout room 3, it's past time to appreciate cultural diversity. What assumptions do faculty and administrators have in relation to students based on appearance, name, or accent? How do these assumptions affect our interactions with our students? Which cultures are represented in MTSU? What is your experience? I'm very interested in to hear what our colleagues have experienced. Which steps can we take to create a more culturally diverse classroom or more culturally aware interaction with students? To that end, we're going to include in the chat I have these questions, and that way you can download, and that way you have the set of questions when you go into your breakout room. And now I would like us to go into our breakout room, and I'd like for you to kind of address these issues or anything else that maybe came up while you were watching those. So I'm opening all the breakout rooms. Room 1, again, deals with the first set of questions, and that's listed. Yeah, this one, the danger of single story. Room 2, on diversity, access, and inclusion. And room 3 is the time to appreciate, it's past time to appreciate cultural diversity. So I'm going to give us till about 20, a little bit 25 after, and then we'll come back together. So if you would, please feel free to pick a room and come together, and I will call us out when time's up.
Thank you, Mike. No takers for room 3 yet.
Perhaps there will only be 2 rooms.
They might like what you were thinking. That might be the case. We'll see. Oh, Roberta, hi.
Hi, I can't figure out how to join the breakout room.
Oh, why?
Oh, maybe because I joined in, I added late.
Oh,
Is
so
that why?
I can assign you to a room. Do you know which story you want to discuss?
I'll go with room 1.
Okay. So I can assign you to room 1.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you assign me to room 3? I don't see how to do that myself. This is Paige.
Yeah, yes, Paige, I will.
Thank
you. Okay. Anyone else who needs to be assigned?
Hello, this is Vanessa. I tried to join the room 3, but I don't know how to do it.
Okay, I just assigned you. This is good.
Yeah.
Because every room has a handful of people.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Jasmine, are you having difficulty getting into a room? Do you want us to assign you into a room? Oops. Oh, damn.
What happened? Oh, you make them close in 54 seconds? Tell them that they're not closing. What'd you do? Oh, will they close now?
Yes. I don't know how to stop it.
Oh,
Can you sign me in room 3, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a minute. And people,
What happened?
You can tell everyone to go back in.
yeah, it's like the Keystone
Do we have
Cops
to
here.
remake the rooms?
I will remake the rooms.
Okay.
Mea culpa.
You can tell them.
We got a message that our breakout room was going to close. Is that correct?
It's an
That's my
accident.
fault.
Yes,
Sorry,
sadly.
Yeah, people will come back in. I'll reopen them.
We'll open them and give them another 15 minutes. Sorry about this. We're testing to see if they're awake.
Yeah, and you can't.
You're awake. We're back.
Yeah, we didn't mean for that to happen, but it did. So
Yeah.
do we reopen rooms? What are we? You're doing it? You're on it. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah. So hopefully.
Do we tell people to join the rooms again?
Nobody.
Oh, stay in their rooms. You told them?
I'm hoping, but people may come back in. We'll see. It seems like we still have rooms.
Yeah, we still have rooms and people are in there. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we need to put Jasmine in room 3, I think.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So, well, oh, here we go. Room 3, move to room 3. Okay, gotcha, I think. Okay, don't touch anything.
I'm not. I guess everybody's still in their rooms. We could go in and check, but I think we're okay.
Everybody looks green in their room. So we've got
Okay.
Danielle, Erica, Kim, Roberta, and Sonia in 1.
Mhm,
Sonia, Kia, Renee, Sheila, Tara, Tiffany, and Wit in 2.
mhm.
Jasmine, John, Paige, Sana, and Yi in 3.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, we got enough people in each one. And then you can broadcast, I don't know, you're gonna give them a 1-minute warning when,
Yeah,
let's see, there it's now 4:13.
we're 13. Yeah,
You can give them,
3:13. Oh, it's 4:13 at your time, isn't it?
oh right, I'm on Eastern. The workshop's over.
See y'all.
I think I can stop. I can pause recording, I guess. Let me see how I do that. Can I recording? Can I just pause so that whoever's watching doesn't have to watch 15 minutes of nothing?
I think so. Mhm.
Okay. Maybe I can, oh, instead of stop video, I say, maybe when I'm sharing, it's not letting me do that.
Mhm.
Okay, and then reshare my screen. So it's this one. And then go back to 1.
Cool.
So you're seeing the slide, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
I can't decide if I like it better with the flower showing or with the enrich the banners. Because I like the banners. It's like I like the banners. Okay, if I'm in the middle, we get a little bit of each.
You got a little bit of both, right? That's me. Try not to let my TV show. So.
There's a TV there. Now it's been recorded, you know. Everyone knows there's a TV there now.
Everybody should be gradually coming back in. Are we? I believe should be all back in. Let me start off by saying I apologize. As always, I pushed the wrong button, and that's when it was you got the first alert that it was going to close. So sorry, that's my fault. But now that we're all back, let's go back, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about to the questions or to your impressions of the different videos that you saw. And please also, if you weren't in this room and you have something to say or something to add to the discussion, please feel free to join in. So for the Breakout Room 1, talking about our single story, the dangers of a single story. How do we view our students? This is what story do we often assign? What is very stereotypical, do you think? Or how do our interactions reflect the one story narrative? Feel free to jump in. I can't see everybody because we're in this mode of view.
I guess I'll jump in. When thinking about this, I thought about the idea of like that one of the dominant stories about MTSU students, or the assumption often has to do with the idea that our students maybe are under prepared or coming from a specific geographic region as well, and that they're not going to do the reading. I don't know, that there are some assumptions about the students that don't that sometimes relegate them to like a lower performance status or something, or assume that of them. That was one point that I brought up. And the other point I brought up had to do, it was more of a question, and it had to do with the race of our students as it relates to degree completion. Somebody had told me, or I had heard that there were like less African American students like completing their degrees, but then someone in my group just told me that our statistical measurements for that are actually leave out all of the students who haven't done all 4 years. Like at MTSU. So that information is not only not very helpful, but also reproduces a single story. So that's all I'll say.
It's interesting, and I think Aleka is going to speak a little bit to the statistics after we've talked about what's in the group, what the groups have talked about. Other ideas, other things that people have talked about for Breakout Room 1, or ideas maybe that when you watched the danger of a single story.
I said nothing because when I watched the video, the TED Talk about the danger of a single story, I could not relate that to the discussion in our breakout room, and nobody asked me what I thought. So it was just an interesting experience in and of itself. So totally valuable.
So when you watched it, could you relate anything about to our students about kind of the idea of the single story, about how people tend to view our students, or how we even view our students? Or
no, I related while I was watching the TED Talk. I was relating more to how I teach.
Fascinating.
Not so much. No, it's not. It's just what do I do to evoke more stories. And I have some thoughts about that, but that's not the direct. I mean, it's okay. We didn't do that.
Let's move to that. I think that's kind of the crux of this too, right? Is then how did you relate to your own teaching? What were your ideas? Sonia?
I'm not going to dominate the conversation.
Well, we could go off onto after that. I mean, I think we're interested in hearing what people have to say, so feel free to start off the discussion.
I can't.
Okay, would somebody else like to join in about what we can do in our classrooms or offices to present a variety of different stories, or what you do perhaps in your classroom to address that?
I'll throw myself under the bus with this one. I'm Danielle. I was in that group, and I teach in leisure sport management. And one of the things that I said, I know sometimes can be easy to do, especially with teaching athletes or teaching art students or teaching music students, is to categorize them based on what their main interest is. So like to say, well, they're athletes, they're going to act a certain way, or they're art students, they're going to act a certain way. So one of the things we actually talked about, especially with online classes, it wasn't my idea, but it was someone else's in the group, was talking about using videos in the discussions so that they can see each other and they can share the stories kind of on a different level than just typing it. That was Kim's wonderful idea. I'll give you that shout out. But I really liked that. And I think that's something I'm going to start doing from now on, because my background is in leisure. So we always talk about fun stuff anyways, but writing it and saying it on video are two completely different things. So I think that would be something interesting to give them a different way to tell their own story, besides the way that I read it.
Mm-hmm. I think that is so important. That's so fascinating to be able to let them tell their own stories sometimes too. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yeah. Did I hear somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I teach in theater, and so I hesitated because I thought I might start to slide from this video to the next one. I mean, because on the one hand, as a theater person, I feel like I have a lot of tools to invite varieties of stories. That's like the whole point of what we do. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you know, often it presumes like a comfort level or a safe space, or asks some risk and vulnerability that sort of bleeds into the codes in the next video. So on the one hand, I feel like I know how to present and solicit a variety of stories. But
Mhm.
I feel like I've had 3 incidences in the last week, either myself or colleagues, where we've sort of butted up against, what's uncomfortable
Mhm.
or feels like hidden for some students, where we feel like we've like totally explained and made this really fun, inviting, and cool assignment. And students who are used to like, there's a right answer in math are not good with that.
And I think that's wonderful. I think that does lead into our to the next room. And again, I strongly encourage people from any of the rooms join in and bring in anything that you want to mention and you want to talk about. But the second one, the second TED Talk, on diversity, access, and inclusion, talking about assumptions and about what students already are bringing into the classroom. What do we assume that they know and what can they do already? And what do we as a university do to offer our first generation or underprivileged students or students who have no experience with university? What do we do, and what assumptions do we make? So the floor is open. I'm talking about hurdles of our students.
I found it interesting. I was a first generation college student, and I know when I came both into community college and then switched over to a university, that it was like being put on another planet. And I try to remember that. And I keep track of which of our students are first generation and check in with them. Is there something I can help you with? Do you understand how to make use of these resources? And things like that, and throw things into our little newsletters and stuff like that so that they can get information without feeling out of place asking for it.
And when you do this, do you have a sense what are our students lacking? What don't they? I found this so fascinating when Anthony Jack mentioned about office hours, about how some students thought that this was the time not to bother professors because this is the time we do our work, and that had never occurred to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
the biggest things that I'm seeing with our students is a lack of knowledge of how to deal with bureaucracy, for want of a better term, but that you can go to these places and these people are there to help you. That there are services available on campus that they never even dreamed were possible. And, so the knowledge of resources is a big thing. And sometimes it's really little tiny things like, okay, they figured out they're supposed to go to this place and they're supposed to get help. They've come back with paperwork and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to fill out some of the forms. What is the relevant information? What do I need to tell a person? Things like that.
Exactly. Tiffany, you had just put into the chat about tutoring and the perception from students about tutoring. Would you like to share that?
I mean, I was representing other people in the group, just just sharing that was one thing that was talked about in our group. I guess I was being a scribe right now, but just that sometimes people would perceive it as remedial. This is someone else's story. I got to scroll and find out who. But anyway, Sheila, I think it was you who said that, that a student who, when suggested to go to a tutor, took it badly. And I've had that too in previous places when, not understanding that the tutoring is there, like the writing tutors are there because you might feel proud of your work already and feel like it's even really good, but you want it to be better because it's, but the idea that they would need help as opposed to this should be a norm because this is what we're here for.
I've had the same experience with recommending tutoring, recommending the writing center. I've gotten to the point now where I've been using the Writing Center since I was a student at MTSU a little while back. And, you know, I'm going up to the Writing Center. Would anyone like to come with me? Writing Center, what are you going there for? I've got a proposal I'm putting together and I'd like some additional eyes on it. Oh, you can do that? Yeah, let's go.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I've had students who suffered from food insecurity and weren't aware that there was a food pantry on campus available to them. That while this may be advertised, they just didn't know about it. And I've dealt with that and pointed students in that direction. I've also had students who were not prepared to take care of themselves physically at campus and had issues in class where I had to address things very privately with the student about personal hygiene matters and stuff, and kind of pointing them in directions to be able to help. So anybody else would like to share before we move on to breakout room 3 sets of questions?
One of the things that I've thought about in terms of hurdles sort of results from student strengths, not just problems that first generation or students in other situations might have. Sometimes these students are like the stars in their family, and they're stars in a family that doesn't have that many resources. So they are a major resource to their family, and it's time consuming. It's emotionally demanding. And unfortunately, it gets in the way of their sometimes doing their work. So I think we need mechanisms that really allow us to consider that, to appreciate that, to respond to that in a positive way when a student says, my grandmother was in the hospital and nobody else could provide transportation for my mother to get to see her. And that's why I missed class, or that's why I was late on this assignment. And you know, I think those students are just amazing resources for the families, and we can't compromise that. But at the same time, we have to appreciate what impact it has on their academic performance.
That's very true. Sometimes our students are caregivers, so within families.
I wanted to jump in really quickly too, to speak to 2 points that were said. First, going back to the office hours and using that term, research is starting to show that if you use student hours instead of office hours, it better communicates the point of those hours to the students. So I've started working with some of the faculty. I'm an instructional designer / faculty person. So I've started working with some faculty to approach descriptions of student hours in that way instead of framing them as office hours. We don't know how that's working out yet. I've just started doing that. So hopefully maybe we can find out how that goes. And then the other thing I wanted to speak to when it comes to first generation, that's actually what my thesis was centered on: first generation, the familiar relationships and how they change, and why you absolutely can be a resource and sometimes have the burdens of, maybe burdens is a stronger word, but you have other responsibilities that pull you in different directions. You also have the difficulty for some students who, as they gain this knowledge, their families start to respond negatively or potentially reject them because, as I called my thesis, they're getting above their raisin. And that can be a dynamic that we aren't necessarily familiar with, because while their family may be very excited that they got to college, they don't necessarily understand the nuances and all the time it takes to be successful at college. And so kind of dealing with that cognitive dissonance as a student as well can be really difficult, because you don't want to disappoint your family, but at the same time, you're doing the thing that you thought was actually going to make your family proud. And that was something I discovered through my research just with first generation students. And so I just thought I would throw that in.
That's a very fascinating point. And I think Sonia says she calls that falling out of agreement. I think that is, it's something that I don't think we often think about, that our students go through. I think that's fascinating. Aleka, should we go on to breakout room 3 so that we have enough time for you to, and then it's past time to appreciate cultural diversity, talking about assumptions that faculty and administrators have in relationship to students based on appearance, name, and accent. You can see this is a common thread among all of these videos, and how do these assumptions affect our interactions, and how do we view culture? How do we look at our students and their cultural backgrounds? Anybody from group 3 would like to join to chime in, or anybody else too, for that matter? Or even which steps we can take to create a more culturally diverse classroom.
Actually, 2 of us from group 3 have already been heard from here.
Well,
and we had a small group. So we didn't get into some of these issues. We talked about the issue that the presenter, Haley Yates, talked about in terms of stereotypes, and I was also impressed with what she said about companies with cultural diversity were 35% more likely to have better financial returns than their competitors. And as a way of saying that cultural diversity is really valuable. And when people try to blend in and are not their whole selves, they really do themselves, certainly, and us a disservice by not contributing in the wonderful way that they can contribute. So our pushing people toward conformity gets in the way of our taking advantage of what they have to offer.
Indeed. I have to say, I think it's interesting because when we say, oh, we teach, a lot of our students come from Tennessee, we kind of lump them all into the same category, that they're Tennessee students, and don't often take into account that East Tennessee sometimes is much different background than West Tennessee, or even perhaps Middle Tennessee, and that we have students who come from all different backgrounds within Tennessee itself too. So, anybody else like to say something?
On the same way that there are different cultural pockets within Tennessee, just because a family is in Tennessee, maybe have been in Tennessee for several generations, that doesn't necessarily indicate what their family culture is. We have families in our program who, some of them are here from Tennessee, some of them from other states, or in some cases countries. But even our Tennessee students, which are the majority, we have Haitian backgrounds, we have Javanese backgrounds, we have, and all of these things bring so much when they're shared with the group, when they're shared with a dance team or with a company program. It gives us other perspectives to look at what we're doing, and it helps us bring their perspective on art, on the performance, on the dance itself. And that makes everything better.
Indeed, it does. Thank you very much. As the professor, the Harvard professor in the second video that we talked about said that everything that we talk about begins with the data. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Aleka and let her kind of talk about some of the data of MTSU and our programs.
Well, thank you all for your contributions. I think it lines up nicely with what we're about to share with you for this last part. And my cat has just decided to start talking. So here's what we know from information that we looked into about the Tennessee and the MTSU cultural and linguistic landscape. This is from census data. So in terms of race and ethnicity, you kind of see the breakdown of races given the choices on this census in terms of race. And then what I wanted to also share with you when I was looking at all these data, I thought this is an interesting chart to share, that we are moving into being more and more diverse within Tennessee. So 91% of our students, undergraduate students, are Tennessee residents, and 89% of our graduate students are Tennessee residents. So this is a good place to start when talking about MTSU, given that the majority of our students are coming from our state. And as you can tell, looking at toddlers down here, you know, we're looking into an environment where our classes will become more diverse as time goes on. Another aspect of this set of data that I wanted to share with you is this slide that discusses ancestry separately from race, because while race and culture can often be related, it's important to distinguish the two, as some of you pointed out. So we therefore want to also share the cultural mix based on self-reported ancestry, because naturally, as two white students of European descent might not share the same culture, two Asian students or Latinx students may not share the same culture. You know, I'm Greek, and even though I'm a white European, I probably have quite a bit that's different from even my neighbors in Italy. So just keeping all that in mind and recognizing that even within the state of Tennessee, we have a variety of cultural backgrounds represented in the population of the state, and surely in the population in our classrooms. And we'll share these slides with you so you can look at these data more closely and go to these websites if you want to look at other data yourselves. This one is from our fact book. So this is the undergraduate population looking at the 2020 fact book, undergraduate population looking at ethnicity, gender, age group, and residency, just to give you an idea of the fact that we do have diversity, right? There's intersectionality. So recognizing that each of us has aspects related to our gender, our age, our race, our culture, and all these are interconnected to create each individual. So none of us belong to any one of these categories. So that's important to also keep in mind. So I've highlighted those, and I also wanted to show you how the breakdown by race in the population of students across all stages, right? Freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors are included here. I wanted to also compare it here with the incoming class. So our freshmen, our new freshmen by ethnicity, I just noticed, just looking at the numbers, just that the number of students that identify as Hispanic, that percent went up by 1%. So that's an encouraging piece of data. Then what I have here is information from the graduating senior survey. So when students are graduating, they complete a survey that includes demographic information. And this is from 3 years, 18 to 20, like 18, 19, 19, 20, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Yeah, and no, 18, 19 through 2021. So almost 2,000 degrees awarded, 1,000 responses, so 60% response rate. And from that, and you can go to this website, we all can go into that website and you can look at all the institutional research data that's available for us to access. So I pulled out just charts on the race that students identified as. Then from what I can tell, their choice for gender was female and male. And then their age brackets were 24 under, 25 to 30, 36 or over, and 31 to 35. And then whether they're US students or foreign students. And this is a picture of what those 1,000 students across all colleges identified as being part of their, what identifies them, part of their identity. And then you can also do it by college. So here you're seeing basic and applied science. Here you're seeing behavioral and health sciences. And here you see business. So you can see, for example, how business, the College of Business and College of Basic and Applied Science, for example, has a larger number of male students in contrast to female students. By contrast, behavioral health sciences has a very large female population and a much larger African-American population of students than some of the other majors, some of the other colleges. Then in the, here I have education, where you can see that again, the number of female students is much larger for College of Education. Liberal arts is what this one reflects. And then this last one is media and entertainment. That's the only college where the male-female ratio is pretty much even. And I also do have, I also have University College. There's where you see the larger variety, as we expect, of age difference among the students. And then coming back again to the whole population of students who responded to the survey. So these are graduating seniors. And it's interesting to see that the breakdown of racial diversity among our graduating seniors is not very different from the racial diversity we see in the population in Tennessee. So that was something that struck me as, and interesting to know that we are drawing in a variety of students based on the population we're drawing from, which is primarily the population of Tennessee. I do also share with you the graduate student breakdown, because naturally graduate students are also part of the equation. We teach undergrads and grad students. And then to notice that a larger number of African-American graduate students joined us this year compared to the population on campus. So for the new graduate students by ethnicity. And then as far as culturally responsive teaching practices are concerned, the message we want to communicate is that it's up to us to educate ourselves. So to be culturally competent, one has to commit to the practice of cultural humility, to continuously explore our own cultural beliefs and intersecting identities through self-reflection and self-critique, and then to learn about, interact with, and appreciate different cultures. So it takes effort, and the effort is ours to expend. So the resource that I have a few slides from is this culturally responsive teaching book, Theory, Research, and Practice by Geneva J. Lots of, it's a, for how many pages? Here I have it. It's a 350-page book with a lot of good information. So that's where I'm summarizing some of her strategies and practices, but it's just a snapshot. She has dozens of suggestions. And I want to go over a few just to give you a sense of the kinds of ways in which she proposes becoming a culturally responsive teacher and also staff member, and also to start with, just simply being a person who cares about being culturally responsive in any context. And the kinds of suggestions are illustrated here. So for example, be an unequivocal advocate and ally for ethnically and racially diverse students. Model desirable and expected culturally diverse values, attitudes, and behaviors. So show students what that looks like in action. Learn, this one's really the most important, learn to see, hear, and listen to diverse students, especially when they speak without words. Much can be learned by simply being present with and paying close attention to students. So putting in the time to get to know our students is the first step. Demand reciprocity, hold yourself and students accountable for declared components of caring relationships. Admit occurrences of fallibility, error, ignorance, and accomplishment in cultural diversity endeavors. Ask students to give personal feedback on how your classroom climate and your teaching style affect their learning efforts, engagement, and outcomes. And then use this information to modify or embellish the classroom climate and your strategies. And then give them credit for these reforms. And there are many more such within that section. The next section is on culture and communication in the classroom, and an illustration of the kinds of practices that fit into this category is things like understanding the impact of cultural communication and education, and being mindful that communication takes many forms beyond the spoken and written. Observe and listen to ethnically diverse individuals, and you can do that in and out of the classroom. We just need to become better at it. Practice active listening to self and to students. The things students talk about with each other in their own context are what's important to them. So restate their comments, ask frequent questions to ensure clarity of meaning. Be conscious of cultural codes and cues that are embedded in your regular habits of teaching. So proverbs that you're used to using, parables, colloquialism, educational jargon. This came up, it's an issue for ESL students. It's also an issue for first generation college students. The more transparent you are, the more inclusive your teaching is. View the linguistic and communicative facility of different ethnic groups as potential strengths and viable instructional resources. That's where the companies that do best are the ones that actually do listen equally to all voices within the diverse environment. So having a diverse workforce doesn't necessarily mean your company will do better, but if your company is good at taking everybody's perspective into its planning and strategies and mission, does better. Use varied mode of communications, both in teaching and in assessment. So different students have different strengths. They've grown up in different cultural contexts where they were taught differently, and the way that they showed accomplishments was different. So to the extent that your subject area allows you to give a variety of assessment activities, you should do that. Another category is the cultural congruity in teaching and learning. So here are some examples. I'll go fast because we're kind of running out of time. Differentiate instructional strategies to accommodate culturally diverse learning styles. Teach using different diverse knowledge schemas and frameworks. Focus on the way students learn. So learn from them so you know how they orient learning tasks. Honor the rhythms to the extent possible for work, and needs for preparation, rituals, and customs. Be deliberate and intentional in teaching about ethnically, racially, culturally, and socially diverse issues and experiences. Use culturally diverse curricula to the extent possible in instructional materials representing as many cultures and ethnic groups as you can. And teach the knowledge, skills, and the will to be change agents for equity, social justice, human dignity, and sociopolitical, cultural, and personal empowerment. And as I said before, use multiple and innovative forms of performance assessment. And I know there's a workshop coming up next week, I think, right, November 1st, on grading, on assessment. So you might want to attend that if this is of interest to you. Another text that is a wonderful textbook, but we can't go over all of that, is this book, Teaching Across Cultural Strengths. So it presents this model that talks specifically about how time, how we break different cultural backgrounds, teach us how to break tasks into different components, how we time things, what kinds of interactions we expect from our faculty, with our faculty. That's another wonderful resource if you want to look into that. And then just to wrap it up, our take-home message is that a good starting point is considering the multiple factors that shape your own identity. Think about your cultural background, and we haven't spoken about religion, but your religious beliefs are also part of your cultural identity. How your age affects your approach to teaching, what education you received, and where you received it. So know your own depth of character, because that's important, because it serves as the personal lens with which you view others. And then consider how the same depth and diversity lies behind every person at MTSU, including colleagues and students. And by giving every colleague and student that same consideration, you prevent them from becoming siloed in one category. So that's the whole fighting the single story. And you acknowledge that aspects of their identity are interconnected, and each person is more than a singular category. I have listed some additional resources, including, we haven't really spoken about accent, but the more you become familiar with accents, both by native and non-native speakers of English, the more you will be doing half the work when you're communicating with people whose accent is different from yours. And speaking as an ESL student, that would be extremely welcome to those of us who didn't come to education with the standard American English as our own language. And just to remind everybody, this workshop is part of a series when there should be other videos of our other sessions that we've already completed. And our FLC included Carmelita and Renee and Soraya, Roberta, John, and Mike, and myself. So I think we're open to questions. There's a few minutes. I can end the show so that we can just see each other. So I'll stop the share, right, Mike? Okay. And then we can see if there are any topics, questions, anything you still would like. Oh, Soraya is here. Hi. She's one of our group too. We did this 2 years ago and we're still presenting. So I think we did the FLC 2 years ago. And then last year we presented 3 workshops, and this year we're presenting 3 workshops. So this is the second of the 3 workshops.
We call you guys overachievers. Then.
I think we have Carmelita to blame. She's supposed to do a lot, which has been great.
Sonia.
I'm sure that you've considered this, but I find it important to say that another person, be it a student or whoever it may be, also has the right to not say anything because they don't feel safe for whatever reason that may be. And I think that a student, possibly because the difference in the power structure, or that they could feel imposed upon if they are asked for something and they're not willing to what we call share it. Just a thought.
And I think that that's actually that people talk about this too, where especially students who represent a minoritized group sometimes will be put on the spot often as the representative in the class to share or whatever, and that often becomes kind of counterproductive then to the teaching environment. Yeah.
And to follow up on that, if you allow, Mike, is because before I seemed perhaps reticent to answer your question, I said I can't. And it was simply because I teach a class I was thinking about on Jewish writers. And I did not want to, on the recording, say what I really thought.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just for, I wasn't being reticent on purpose. I was sort of protecting myself.
Mm-hmm. The recording dynamic adds a whole new layer, I think, to things at times too, you know, in this day and age, which, by the way, we can stop recording and we can also then share if people would like to as well.
But isn't it a pity that we can't be, or at least that I don't feel that I can be myself in a recording at MTSU?
Mm-hmm.
So should I stop the recording?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Okay.
For the question and answer.